I'm going to tell you that a couple years ago, I had a total meltdown while sitting backwards on a tenant's toilet repairing their broken handle.
It was not fun to watch.
It wasn't about the tenant at all. It was more about how sometimes as rental property owners, we have to do stuff we prefer we didn't have to do. And here's the deal. There was no way I was going to pay someone else, I don't know, what, $75, $100 to put a $10 toilet handle on the toilet when I can do it myself. However, repairing someone else's toilet was not how I saw myself spending my days at this age. And at the time, I think I had just turned 50. So at some point in time, regardless of the cost, we do see ourselves fully transitioning to a handyman or a full-service property management company. Remind yourself that it's not every day and it's not forever. You always have a choice in life, especially when it comes time to maintenance repairs. Welcome to your Landlord Resource Podcast. Many moons ago, when I started as a landlord, I was as green as it gets. I may have had my real estate license, but I lacked confidence and the hands-on experience needed when it came to dealing with tenants, leases, maintenance, and bookkeeping. After many failed attempts, fast forward to today, Kevin and I have doubled our doors and created an organized, professionally operated rental property business. Want to go from overwhelmed to confident? If you're an ambitious landlord or maybe one in the making, join us as we provide strategies and teach actionable steps to help you reach your goals and the lifestyle you desire, all while building a streamlined and profitable rental property business. This is your Landlord Resource Podcast.
Hey, landlords. Thanks for joining us. My name is Kevin, and I'm here with my handy woman, Stacy.
Hello there.
In all seriousness, she is pretty handy and can manage many of our repairs. I'm not bad at patching holes, painting, cleaning stuff, but Stacy has some real skills.
You're too kind. My dad was a super hands-on guy. He and my brother actually, and a lot of other family members, built a beautiful home in the Sierra Mountains when I was young, and I was often asked to be a helper or a runner. So while I had to wait around, I watched and learned how things work. And I guess being around a home being built from the ground up taught me not to be afraid to try things myself. And then many moons ago, my late husband and I owned a lighting store. So I learned a lot about electrical and how to wire fixtures and replace plugs and receptacles and such. Plumbing, for the most part, I will leave to the professionals, but, I could replace the guts of a toilet with a blindfold on.
Well, let's just say I'm happy being Stacy's assistant when she's working.
Yeah, well, we do make a good team. So today we are talking about repairs that we see most often in our rental properties. This episode is not to scare you. It is to show you how preventative maintenance can save you from having to constantly be servicing your rental properties on an emergency basis. And no one wants those calls about broken water lines or HVAC that doesn't work.
We actually don't want calls on anything. This includes running toilets, electrical that isn't working. But when it comes to home repairs, owning a rental property is really not much different than owning your personal residence. The main difference is that by law, you must make the necessary repairs for your tenant's right to peaceful enjoyment of their unit they are renting from you. So here are our top 10 most common rental unit repairs, along with how we handle them when they pop up, and the best way to be proactive to minimize them from happening in the first place. Number 1 on the list, garbage disposal issues. Either the tenant's got something jammed in there or the bottom rusted out and it's leaking. Now, we do periodic inspections twice a year. On our 6-unit building, we take our contractor in with us so he can evaluate plumbing, electrical, and mechanical items as we do maintenance work such as change the air filters, check the smoke detectors, look for mold, make sure there's no lease violations going on like unauthorized roommates or fire hazards. Each time he goes in, he checks the disposal to make sure it's working correctly and looks at the bottom of the disposal for rust.
Yeah, well, here's a tip for you. To deter rust from happening in the first place, encourage your tenants to run the disposal every time they rinse dishes. The smallest of particles do not go down the drain, and that wet muck sits in the bottom of the disposal, eventually causing it to rust out. It doesn't take more than a few grains of rice to sit in there for an extended period of time and start to cause deterioration. Also, when you or anyone else flushes water down while the disposal is running, make sure you use cold water only. Hot water makes the motor run even hotter and can cause it to burn out quicker. And the life of a disposal can last 3 times longer when tenants do these 2 little tasks.
Yep, those are good tips to put in your move-in binder under notes or maintenance.
Yeah, our contractor actually told us those tips when he first started working with us, and we immediately instituted putting it into telling all the tenants to do that.
We also check to make sure the garbage disposal wrench that came with the disposal is still under the sink. It's basically a thick hex wrench that is squared off in an S shape. We tape it to the inside of the cabinet under the sink so that it's easy to find for the tenant if there's disposal jams. We did a fix-it video for these and posted it on YouTube. We will put the link for the wrench and the video in our show notes, but the gist of it is we did a short video of how to clear a jammed disposal by showing them what the wrench looks like, where it's located, and how to use it to fix the garbage disposal. When a tenant contacts us for a problem with the disposal, we send this video off to them, and every single time the tenant comes back with, "Wow, it actually worked."
Yeah, that's fun.
Check the video out. Feel free to save it and send this video to your tenants when they call complaining their disposal won't turn on or blades are jammed.
All right. Number 2 on the list goes to toilets. From a running toilet or a broken handle to a leaking tank, toilets are definitely a common rental repair. Here's the deal. Plastic and rubber parts break down and don't last. And as the rubber seals age, they do not close tight and the water gets through, usually causing the toilet to run after being flushed. When we do our periodic inspections, we can check the guts of it and see how the toilets are doing. We also check the underside of the tank to see if the rubber gasket is cracking and maybe is going to start leaking soon. If you're a tracker and want to be proactive, change the innards of the toilet every 5 years. I'm going to sideline a little bit here. I'm going to tell you that a couple years ago, I had a total meltdown while sitting backwards on a tenant's toilet repairing their broken handle.
It was not fun to watch.
It wasn't about the tenant at all. It was more about how sometimes as rental property owners, we have to do stuff we prefer we didn't have to do. And here's the deal. There was no way I was going to pay someone else, I don't know, what, $75, $100 to put a $10 toilet handle on the toilet when I can do it myself. However, repairing someone else's toilet was not how I saw myself spending my days at this age. And at the time, I think I had just turned 50. So at some point in time, regardless of the cost, we do see ourselves fully transitioning to a handyman or a full-service property management company. But what is important to understand is that we need to, 1, budget for this. The reserves will have to be deep in order for us to hand this off to someone else. And 2, given the experience we have gained by doing it ourselves, we have standards that we want to maintain. This experience will allow us to be able to interview and choose a replacement, whether it's just a handyman or a full-time property manager that can do the work to our satisfaction. You see, being a rental property owner takes a certain mindset. And just like with a 9-to-5, there will be times where you have to do things you don't want to do. So prepare for those times. Remind yourself that it's not every day and it's not forever. You always have a choice in life, especially when it comes time to maintenance repairs. All right, we can get back to the subject now.
Okay. Number 3, appliance malfunctions. Burner igniters and refrigerators are our top appliance calls. As ranges age, the igniters or heating elements will stop working. With the high cost of an appliance repair person, consider having them replace all the igniters or heating elements when they have the unit opened up. Usually when one goes, the others aren't far behind.
Now I'm going to jump in here that when you do that repair, evaluate the cost of that versus buying a new one. New ones are super expensive these days. Sometimes you can get it repaired for a few $100, but obviously you want to evaluate both sides.
Very true. Now for refrigerators, we strongly recommend not buying ones with ice makers.
Yeah.
It's common for the water line to freeze and the condenser to burn out. Those are $300 fixes a couple times a year. Our refrigerator calls drop to 0 when we stop buying them with the added ice maker feature. Knock on wood, but we rarely have a call for the dishwashers or microwaves.
Yeah, we've been very lucky there. But we have had a couple microwaves that have gone out, but they were in for like 15 years or something. So, and we were a bit behind on being proactive with regards to the appliances. And as the maintenance calls started to increase, we decided it was probably time to start replacing all those old appliances as the units turned over.
Yeah, that was a good decision. Certainly helps rent them when the appliances are upgraded and more modern looking too.
Right. All right. On to number 4, and that is leaky faucets. Drippy faucets are an easy fix, but most tenants don't even let us know about it. Typically, we discover this issue during our inspections. And being in California, we always have to be mindful of drought situations. So, leaky sinks and running toilets can be really expensive, as most landlords of multifamily properties have to pay for the water. As the tenant doesn't have to foot the bill, they sometimes don't understand the impact that their blasé attitude has on their landlord's pocketbook. Again, periodic inspections to check these items is key. Additionally, during these inspections, when we have our contractor on site or our repairman, we're going to send out an email to the tenants asking if they have any issues that need attention. Multiple times we have had responses letting us know of leaky faucets that otherwise would have waited on an inspection of some sort. So our most common is a bathroom sink that is dripping. And we'll admit we tend to use inexpensive faucets, so the parts tend to wear out faster. Definitely a situation that you get what you pay for. In the kitchen, we only seem to get reports for dripping faucets when we have one of those pull-out spray heads. And the connection between the water line and the head often becomes loose, or we've had a water line that's gotten a hole. And we do realize many landlords do not use these for that reason, but a few of our units are a little higher end, so the tenants like this feature, and honestly, it doesn't happen often enough to warrant discontinuing the use.
Okay, what number are we now? 5?
Yeah, I think 5, and that's smoke detector.
Ah, yes. The lovely 10-year battery smoke detectors that only last 5 to 7 years. Rarely do we get a call that the battery needs to be replaced. Most of our calls are because the quote-unquote 10-year detectors we bought have failed at 6 years. We have yet to have a 10-year smoke detector or carbon detector last more than 7 years. We have found disabled units in cabinets, on top of the refrigerator, behind the washing machine, under the sink. You wouldn't believe. It's very frustrating, and we would not have considered this a common rental repair. For this reason, we replace all our smoke detectors every 5 years. The very last thing we need is for a tenant to get frustrated with the beeping unit and remove it completely. That adds risk to them and the other tenants in the complex. Our favorite smoke detectors are the ones that are interconnected, meaning when one goes off, it will trigger adjacent units nearby to sound as well. This is typical if you have hardwired smoke detectors, but now they make them for older homes that only use the battery-operated ones. So if a fire, say, starts in the kitchen in the middle of the night, and the detector closest to that one is beeping, but everyone is upstairs sleeping with their doors closed, it is likely they won't hear the detector beeping downstairs. They will have to wait for the fire to escalate and for the smoke to reach them on the second level. So, in our 100-year-old single-family home we installed battery-operated interconnecting units that, when one goes off, it triggers the others to all go off at the same time. This small investment can certainly save lives and the damage to your rental property as well. They are made from kitty and cost a little less than $40. A small investment for safety. We'll put a link in the show notes of the ones we use.
Yeah, I like those ones. Now we switched over to them. Next up, number 6 are pests or bugs and rodents. It may seem as simple as hiring a pest control company to come in and spray around the home or your complex every month, but even that has a limited solution. We've had issues with ants, cockroaches, termites, fruit flies, and mice. So, yeah, we have a pest control service contract that is worth its weight in gold. However, having them come out and spray the perimeter only goes so far. It doesn't tackle the issues with termites that fly in from surrounding trees, rodents that find their way in from the underside of the home, or cockroaches that come up via the sewer lines. Yes, in the sinks and the bathtubs.
That was pretty gross.
Yeah, well, luckily they don't come in when the tenant's in the shower or anything like that. For the most part, the city's gotten control of the cockroaches in the sewer, and our pest control application handles the ants and the other creepy crawlers. There are some pest issues you have to work a little harder to get rid of, though. So termites is one. We got a notification from a tenant about small holes that were in the wall with some dust below it, and we acted quickly, but we still had to tent the entire property. And for our story and how we handled those termites, listen to episode 10 where we talked all about it. When we had a mouse, we discovered that we had one unit that had a small hole behind the washer and dryer unit where the water lines were connected. And that mouse did get under the kitchen sink where the dishwasher line was and chew on the plastic coating of that metal tubing. We got the mouse out fairly quickly. Unfortunately, we did not know that it had chewed the water line in a couple years, and a couple tenants later, it burst. And luckily, the tenant caught it right away because they were home. And because we taught them how to turn the water off in emergency, there was no water damage. So add looking for small holes to your inspection.
So mice can crawl through any hole larger than a 1/4 inch or about the size of a pencil. Stuff holes with steel wool until you can get out to patch it closed. Anything else, they'll chew right through.
The last and most disgusting that we have had to deal with are fruit flies. These are nasty little buggers to have an infestation with. It happens a lot when food is left on the counter to rot or there's a lot of trash. And they like warm, damp environments and seem to multiply by the minute. And before you know it, they're everywhere. And we thought the termite issue was our most expensive problem, but it turns out when there's a fruit fly infestation, they leave feces pretty much everywhere, causing the need for the entire unit to be all completely primed and painted. And in our instance, it was so bad we had to replace all the appliances. So our discovery of the infestation was during a routine inspection. The tenant clearly had a flood and failed to catch it or clean up on it properly. And we walked in there and there was a horrible smell. The laminate floors were lifted and damaged and the place was a mess. And I realize it's not a requirement to clean up when your landlord's coming through, but clearly there was a problem with this tenant. And I guess they thought because they had cleaned up the flies from the surface that we wouldn't know about it. But we inspect windows and blinds and pull out appliances to check water lines behind, etc. So when there's a million yellow dots all over every surface of the entire unit, it makes you wonder what the heck is going on. Upon further inspection, we found dead flies in the rubber seals and the drawer slides of the refrigerator, air filters, dryer filter, in and on all areas of stovetop and the range, everywhere. And it was a major lease violation and a cause for eviction.
Luckily, though, we didn't have to go through the full eviction process.
No.
This tenant knew they had messed up. We ended up giving him notice, and after about a month or so, he was out. Now, this was one of our studio apartments, so the size wasn't huge, but we had to replace the floors and remodel the bathroom from the flood, then do several layers of paint, replace the blinds, and, as Stacy said, all the appliances. We are almost done with this remodel, and we are excited to say we are pivoting. We are going to furnish it and offer it as a midterm rental instead of long-term. We get a lot of turnover in the studios, so hoping if we have to turn it often, we can at least get a little higher rent by offering it to traveling nurses and corporate employees coming in for, say, 3 to 6 months.
Right. So for those of you unfamiliar with the terms, long-term is the most traditional option, offers a lease for 1 year or longer. Midterm is usually 30 days or longer, but less than a year. And often all the furnishings are provided and utility costs are paid for by the landlord. Much like a short-term rental, like Airbnb or something like that, but usually 30 days or longer, typically 3 to 6 months, depending on who the tenant is.
And most importantly, the rent is usually at a premium rate. These tenants come in with their clothes, a few personal belongings, and you provide everything else. We'll see how this one goes. Okay, moving on to number 7, which is drywall repairs. Straight up, this is excessive holes in the walls when we flip a unit after a move out. Some tenants like to make their unit their own space, which is fine within reason. This is such a common rental repair, we had to add an addendum to our lease over it. We had tenants hanging TVs in every room. The holes those bolts make to hang a large TV are ridiculous. And our walls are textured, so it's not like you can just slap some spackle on there and call it a day.
Yeah. So years ago, we knew of a tenant who had a teen that liked to mix music. And I know I'm dating myself here. That parent complained of the noise. So the teen got 2-inch foam egg mattress toppers and stapled them to all 4 walls of the bedroom to create a noise barrier. You can't make this stuff up. And then when the tenant moved out and their teen removed all the foam, they left all the holes in the wall, and I think a lot of the staples too. And she actually got really angry when she found out that she wasn't going to get her deposit back. I mean, duh. I mean, clearly not understanding that this landlord was going to have to retexture the walls to cover up all those holes.
Other examples we have experienced personally would be large holes for bike racks or multiple holes when tenants create a picture wall. These are especially hard to cover up when the walls are textured. So how to avoid this issue? As part of your lease, use a disclosure to state how many holes you consider wear and tear. Include maximum size of the holes you allow and what you will charge to patch should they exceed what is stated in the addendum. When you do your inspection, note where you may need to inspect upon move-out.
Yeah, and in our welcome basket now, we have started to provide these new picture hanging devices from 3M, and they're not super new, but they're called 3M claws. They come in various sizes for hanging items depending on the weight. We explain that they are approved for hanging and that they can use as many as they want. They're super simple to use, they don't require tools, and the holes are minimal. And they're a lifesaver when you have to go back in to patch. And we'll link them in the show notes so you can check them out.
We're getting there. We are up to number 8, HVAC issues. Typically, you do not know about these issues until you're knee-deep into a heat wave or a cold snap in the dead of winter. Most common complaints for us are that the AC is not blowing cold air or just not working at all. This can mean the Freon needs to be refilled or the compressor or condenser has gone out. It can also mean the thermostat is not working correctly. How to avoid this? Every spring, have your HVAC person come out to inspect and service all your air conditioning units. This will mean they will check the unit to make sure it's working correctly, refill the Freon, doesn't happen very often, check the ducts to make sure there are no holes, hello rodents, that the air handler is clear, etc. They will need access to the unit so they can test the thermostats and make sure the units are cooling accurately.
Yep, we just had our HVAC guy out a couple weeks to get this done. And it was funny because one air conditioner unit did need Freon, one needed a new thermostat, and one air conditioning unit needed a new part that was failing. So out of 6 apartments that he checked that day, we found that 50% of the units had issues. And then had we not checked it, we would have found out during the first major heat wave. So good luck getting him back out there to repair that air conditioner for a couple weeks after that heat wave starts. All right, we're getting down to it now. Number 9 is electrical problems. And where this is rare, it generally comes down to breakers that continually pop and need to be replaced. And we see a lot of GFI plugs in bathrooms and kitchens needing replaced often as well. Like water lines, both these items can last 5 to 7 years depending on how much they are used and the loads that are on them. GFIs going out in the kitchen are common given the counter appliances that are now operating these days. You got air fryers and toaster ovens that are like little mini ovens that a lot of the tenants have. Breakers can be expensive if they continually go out, so evaluate the loads that are being pulled. If they service a bedroom or an office, look and see if there's a lot of electronics hooked up on those plug strips. And we check for this when we do our inspections because it can be a fire hazard as well. And we've reached the end, number 10. The most common repair we encounter are water leaks.
Ah, yes, the wonderful water leaks. You have to love water. If a leak goes undetected, there is so much damage.
Yep.
Now, we tend to see most of our leaks under bathroom sinks because tenants shove too much stuff in the cabinet and it tends to knock the plumbing loose. Other than that, old seals, washers, water supply lines that fail due to age. Do you know that plastic water lines typically only last for 5 years? Many plumbers use them because they're inexpensive and because they're long gone by the time the lines fail.
Yeah.
Proactive maintenance is the key with preventing this from happening. We change our water lines with metal units every 5 years, no matter what. If a water line fails and no one is home, it can be a major disaster for your tenant, the tenant below, and the landlord. Hire a contractor or plumber for the day and go from unit to unit and replace them all. It may cost you $500, but it is nothing compared to the thousands more in damages, housing, mold remediation, and replacement cost. Yes, this is why you have insurance, but after filing a claim, your rates will absolutely be affected, and you will be paying that increase for years to come. Be proactive.
Yeah. Well, you want to know how we know this? That sweet 100-year-old single-family rental home that we have had a broken toilet water supply line that ran for a couple days. The house was vacant, and our middle guy found it when he went up there for a weekend to stay. We literally had just completed a small renovation of new windows, new interior paint, all new flooring about 2 weeks before this, and we were all ready to rent it out again. So when he walked in the door, he thought someone was in the shower, and what he found was that 1/3 of the home had flooded. When he called, we thought he was joking. The bathroom was destroyed by the moisture. The carpets and the laminate floors were soaked. The baseboards several feet up the wall were swollen. We had a vacancy insurance rider on this home just in case, and boy, are we glad we did. What the hardest part was to swallow was that we broke our own rule. We had bought that home about 5 years before, so we should have changed out all the water lines when that contractor was on site. And I'm not going to go into it, but let's just say this little mishap would have cost us tens of thousands of dollars in remediation if we did not have that vacancy insurance. We'll talk more about that, about vacancy insurance and what it is here soon.
I still can't believe that happened. I mean, you always hear about it, and when it does happen to you, it's just so unfortunate.
Yeah, well, and it's especially because we have systems in place to avoid this from happening. And we dropped the ball big time on this property, and it bit us in the butt pretty hard. So this podcast is not to scare landlords. On the contrary, it's to reinforce the concept of semi-annual inspections and being proactive with your maintenance. Run your business professionally. Manage units and tenants with respect, but be firm and diligent. Keep track of your repairs and your repair requests. If you employ a property manager, it is essential you ensure these are tasks and the business mindset that they uphold. Remember, whoever you hire to manage your property is like an employee. When something goes wrong within the confines of your unit, you are ultimately responsible for your tenant's well-being. And we have a 6-page inspection checklist that we offer. As of when this podcast releases, it's the only item we offer for sale. It's $5 and covers every area of the home up to a 4-bedroom and 4-bath. You pay to download it one time and you can use it over and over again for every inspection that you do. It even covers exterior spaces. It covers attics, basements, garages, and there are spaces next to each and every line item for notations as to the condition of the area and space at the bottom of each page for notes of other things you might find like lease violations.
It's really comprehensive, likely more than most people would need. But in that case, you can just use what your unit includes, and you can't beat the price for $5.
Right. So we'll put a link to that in the show notes. That's our podcast for today. We hope you enjoyed it. If you could do us a favor and share it with other rental property owners, we would appreciate you helping us getting the word out. If you'd like the link emailed to you each week, subscribe to our free newsletter. It includes weekly landlord tips, early access to our blogs, landlord-specific articles written by other industry pros, and of course, a link to the podcast. And we'll include a link to that in our show notes, or you can go to yourlandlordresource.com/subscribe. That's yourlandlordresource.com/subscribe. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Stacy. I'm here with Kevin. And until next time, you got this, landlords.